Hello.
Hi. Don't worry about a microphone. It's better if you don't have a microphone. I'll get the microphone.
Probably. Welcome to Smell My Podcast.
It should really be called the John and Sim Show.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Johnny. Cool. I love you. Hello.
Hello again.
How are you?
Good. How are you? You look a bit stressed.
I'm feeling so stressed.
Shane, do you want to talk about it? Do you want me to look at you or do you want me to look at the camera? What do you prefer?
I don't know. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another riveting episode.
How do you know? It hasn't.
Yeah,
We haven't done it yet.
it was sarcasm. That was tongue in cheek. What do you want to talk about?
What do you want to talk about?
Suicide.
What about it?
I don't like it. When I was with Lifeline, we were taught that we respect the autonomy and the choice of the individual, and we don't judge the cause of death. But that is post the fact. I still firmly believe and know to be true that we should pursue life and work to prevent death. That is a noble pursuit in all worlds, in all cultures. Life is sacred. And then what I happen to know clinically about suicide and the despair that a person must feel when they choose to take their own life, I would also feel very passionate about eliminating any circumstances that could cause a fellow human being to feel that desperate. So I feel like suicide is the modern day bubonic plague. It's like a silent killer, literally. And it's something that I don't know if it's being addressed, but the fact that people are choosing to take their own life in our community shows me that it is not being addressed effectively.
I just thought as you were speaking, I don't have my phone on me, but I did actually look the other day. There was, I don't know if you remember, it's on my LinkedIn. I don't know if you remember Discovery Life. The amount, I don't remember the exact statistic and how it fitted in, but it was something to the effect, it was earlier this year, so it's very, very new data, is that they had a huge spike in suicides.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that. We can put the link, somewhere, and we can look at that, but it was definitely a spark in terms of payouts and
You see,
in luck, and it was in the age group of like 40, 50, around there. It was there, if I remember correctly.
don't you find it interesting that what happens in our tiny,
Bubble.
like the tiny radius of our life in our community is a microcosm of the greater population?
Yeah, well, I mean, why would I think you mean in terms of like a middle class population.
Well, I'm firstly, yes, but I'm also just saying the fact that we've experienced 2 suicides in the last 2 months, not even, with 1 degree of separation from our own family, is not anecdotal.
Yeah, but I get that, but I'm just saying our community, if you just extrapolate that to other communities, I think it's
Contemporaneous.
right. It has to be some kind of relative benchmark. But I agree with you, and I think the point, what I was going to say is, why would our community be any different to any other community? There's pockets of excellence, and there's pockets of, I don't know, what's the opposite of excellence, of complete,
Despair,
yeah,
inadequacy,
and just,
uselessness,
and so there's good people, there's bad people, and
and then there's the middle.
right, and so for people, and I hear it all the time, "Oh, community is so amazing." You know, there are pockets of excellence, and there are, I think I've got like a nice community, but there still is, and they are, because it is in this country and there are nuances, etc., etc. We're not immune to any of the
No.
social ills, and suicide is one of them, unfortunately. The reality.
Well, I feel like, yeah, it's a reality, but it's a reality that perhaps could be far more under control.
I mean, I don't know what it is to control. I just think it's, there's so much behind, there's so many layers behind it, but like what I see. And it's
Mm.
interesting is what I again, when you were talking, I met with a client 10 days ago or so, and this client was saying that she hopes that her, I'll just say her ex-partner doesn't commit suicide because he has no money, and it's just and like at the time I was just, the reason why I'm saying it is because I can only think of a financial
Well, this is
rationale.
so interesting that this is where we came back to, because as you know, I don't plan these conversations. You kind of wish I would, but I don't. And I do want to talk about, or I wanted to talk about suicide because it's on my heart at the moment, unfortunately. But to your point, if you say there's so many layers, what we learned, I learned this at university, I learned this in honors level, I've learned this anecdotally in my master's research, I've learned this through Lifeline. So in every single strata of the psychological world, the baseline cause of suicide is a deep, pervasive depression. And it's very commonly accepted today that depression is an illness. There's clinical causes or perhaps clinical symptoms. You can draw a clinical picture and there's a clinical treatment. But as that progresses, it's becoming clearer that that is such a tiny piece of the picture, the clinical element. And research is showing more and more and more and more how minimally effective clinical interventions are, because the clinical causes are also so minimal. What does that mean? It means that, scientifically speaking, depression is not enough serotonin, ostensibly. There's elements of dopamine as well, but ostensibly it's serotonin. And so the most refined drugs we have today and the most commonly prescribed, you were talking about this in the DiscMQ, are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressants. Yet exercise, just mild exercise, has been clinically proven, this is through scientific research and study, to be 75% more effective to reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. So let's compare that to an illness like diabetes, because I think through normalizing mental health struggles, we have done things like compare it to other chronic illnesses, which are very clinically determinable and treatable. So if you look at diabetes, diabetes is ostensibly not enough insulin. If we give a diabetic insulin, it cures their diabetes on an ongoing basis. Your pancreas doesn't produce insulin. You want to eat sugar. You put insulin in with a syringe. You're not diabetic in that moment. It's not the same with clinical depression. So you can look at the brain and say, there's obviously not enough serotonin being drawn back up and coming down at those inhibitors, at those interaction points in the synapses, in the neural networks. But then why, if we pump the brain with more serotonin, does it not cure the depression? So, okay, you could say this is the age-old debate in psychology, nature versus nurture. But why I'm so excited about what you said is that I've been researching and reading and spending a lot of time watching Johann Hari. who has become very quickly my most favorite nonfiction writer. He is an investigative journalist and author. He is a researcher in the truest sense. He's also extremely intelligent. He went to Cambridge, came from nothing, middle to lower class upbringing in the UK, and went to Cambridge and is extremely successful. He's probably most widely known for a book that he wrote called The Magic Pill, which is a huge investigation into Ozempic. Very interesting results. He's got a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and it's very, very well-rounded research. But then I discovered he's done other research studies and authored other books, one of which is about depression.
And what does he say? It's cut to the chase.
You can't cut to the chase, it's too big, but I'll try. And that is, he talks about an experiment called Rat Park. And he extrapolates a lot of stuff about addiction, but he also extrapolates a lot of stuff about depression and anxiety. So in Rat Park, it was an experiment done probably in the 60s, trying to test addiction. So they put rats in a cage and they would give the rats two options of water, regular water and water laced with opioids or heroin. And almost immediately the rats would choose the opioid-infused water, become addicted, overdose, and die. And then I'm not sure what triggered him to change the architecture of his research, but he then created what he called Rat Park. So he created a full ecosystem for the rats in the cage with other rats where they were free to play with each other, bond with each other, have sex with each other, etc., eat, and they had the two choices of water. And the two most interesting things was that, number one, for the most part, they didn't even indulge in the heroin, in the opioid-infused water. But when they did, they didn't actually go back to it in an addictive way, and they didn't become addictive. Now, this is interesting because heroin is supposed to be the most clinically addictive substance on earth. They say there's an 80% addiction rate on the first hit. But then how come you and I, if we have a terrible migraine, can take a Tramoset and we are not addicted to Tramoset, which is an opioid? So that's point number one, which leads to the most important finding vis-a-vis depression and anxiety, which is that because they were happy and fulfilled in Rat Park, they didn't need to go back and dissociate through the use of opioid water. What does that mean if we bring it back to suicide? Depression doesn't exist for its own sake. It's not like some people are born with type 1 diabetes and their pancreas is going to stop producing insulin and my brain is going to stop producing serotonin. There's an interactive relationship with my environment that will affect how much serotonin I have, but will also affect other things like my general perception of how fulfilled I am, how capable I am, how much self-esteem I have.
Okay.
And that will determine my decisions. So when we say depression causes suicide, what I think should be saying is, why is this person depressed? Because that can be intervened.
Right.
And I think you would argue, and I would agree with you, that financial troubles is probably the most depressing thing a person can experience. It is the most impotent. It is the most out of control. It is the most helpless. Because as we said last time, your only option is to make more money. Well,
Not so simple.
how do you just make more money? And how do you just survive?
Well, what I was going to ask you is, okay, so I agree with you that money, financial is in my experience and what I've encountered is the biggest contributor. But what would the other ones be? Like failed relationships,
Failed
like what
relationships,
else?
death, like loss of a family
Yeah.
member. But we could extrapolate from that. Death is inevitable. We all know we are going to, number one, die, and number two, witness death. We're going to have people we love die. That's what life is.
Yeah.
Death is a part of
The
life.
control element around that.
So we know that it's going to happen. I don't know that I'm going to fall into poverty. I don't know that I'm going to encounter a time in my life where I can't, God forbid, afford my children's school fees. That shock and impotence alone can throw me into a cycle. Whereas if God forbid someone passes away, as devastating as it is, I am aware that in my lifetime I will experience death. And then with the loss of relationships, disillusion of relationships, again, the number one cause of divorce the world over is financial troubles and then in-laws. So all roads lead to Rome, unfortunately, here.
I was thinking, yeah, it's something that I've actually brought up with you before, and that is, I don't know where this falls, this scenario that I have in my head, and actually can't get an answer to, and that is, why when you look at a beggar on the side of the road, I mean, they're a beggar, right? Inherited, they got no money, not much prospect, you know, that's pretty clear. Why are they not, maybe, again, it's a bit brutal what I'm going to say, and
Yes. Why don't they go off
why,
themselves?
yeah, why are they, what are they living for? I mean, they are in pain. I mean, they may be on substances as well.
Well, I think the answer to your question is quite infantile, but it's actually a very real answer. The beggar on the street has more hope than the middle class man whose earnings are capped but his children's school fees are increasing. That middle class man does not have any hope that
Middle class
next,
man.
the average middle
Oh,
class
sorry. Okay,
man,
yeah.
he cannot realistically hope that by some miracle next month he's going to earn more money than he earned this month. But the beggar on the street, every single car that passes him could give him a 20 rand note. It could happen.
Also, I suppose it's all relative at the end of the day. The pressure that the beggar wakes up with is his pressure's got certain pressure. The middle class person, the family with debt, with
Yes,
all of
that's
these.
one line of thinking which is completely true. It is all relative. The beggar on the street, all he has to worry about is making enough money to buy a loaf of bread and a bottle of Coke that day, and
And then
then
he's happy.
he's survived
Yeah.
another day. But it is achievable.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
possible. Whereas the middle class man only hopes when he's in that hole to be able to afford to survive another day, proverbially and literally. But he knows it's not possible. He knows at the end of the month, salary X is coming and expenses Y are coming, and there's a massive divide.
And I suppose also beggar A isn't necessarily comparing himself to beggar B, and
Wow.
they're not they're not keeping up with bigger
Mm,
Jones, so to speak.
wow.
There isn't that. I mean, there may be elements of it, but I really think that there's that
You said
peer
there's a
pressure.
cultural element
Uh,
because amongst beggars, one could assume perhaps, I mean, I've seen this anecdotally, and I'm sure there's research on this, that there may be far more of a culture of survival. And, Ubuntu means I am because of the other. That, thank God, is a huge culture in South Africa, which in order for me to survive, I need you to survive. Whereas if you start getting into the middle class with sort of smoke and mirrors and secrecy and trying to keep up with the Joneses and make people think I have more than I do, it's the narrative flips, and it's no longer in order for me to survive, I need you to survive. It becomes eat or be eaten.
yeah, it's jungle. But I do suppose again that obviously the bigger proverbial beggar, they'll fight literally to the death for a piece of bread if they need to, right? So it's not.
One doesn't know, but
Yeah, but I'm
perhaps.
saying if you got if you got such a little, you'll fight over something so small.
But
And
you have that drive to survive. I think it boils down to hope, and not in I hope I meet a unicorn, a realistic hope. It is possible. Maybe yesterday I didn't get enough money to buy a loaf of bread and a Coke, but 2 days ago I managed to get enough money to buy a loaf of bread and 2 Cokes. And I started the day with an extra 5 rand. It's a dopamine hit. Every single car that I stand next to the window, it's a dopamine hit. Am I going to get a 5 rand or not? So that it could be seen as a form of an addiction, but a form of a drive. This is something called drive theory, which says you only have a singular focus in any moment, but that focus becomes your drive. And at a very visceral level, it's a drive to survive. Whereas in the middle class, you have to be intellectualizing everything. And when you've intellectualized your life and the numbers just simply aren't lying to you, there's no hope.
Well, I think that's what you're saying. The proverbial beggar, he needs to come up with $100, which is, he probably does there and thereabouts
It's
every day.
achievable.
It's achievable. Whereas for, what we were discussing last week and, before that, to come up with 100,000 Rand net or 200,000 Rand, whatever it is, and then the debt and the shame and the
Guilt.
guilt and just everything around that is,
Well, I wanted to talk about suicide, and I think I don't have any proof of this, but I would be very comfortable to put my name against the statement that financial problems is probably at least half of the cause of suicides, if not more. And I want to say that I can't imagine that a person becomes suicidal on the first month that the numbers don't line up.
yeah.
Because a person does inherently feel they have options. But what happens when they've exhausted those options? What happens when you've taken one too many loans, you've borrowed, you've gambled a bit, you've asked your parents for money, your parents start saying no, you start not being able to pay your friends back for those little loans here and there. One little email or one little child walking through the door and saying, I need 200 Rand for a flute for music class. You don't know what the straw that breaks the camel's hump is going to be, but
Yeah.
there's a very quick road to despair and helplessness.
Yeah, so right now, if you're in the middle class and you're on medical aid, you'll get mental health, there are interventions. Whether you get anti-anxiety medication or antidepressant, or if it gets to the point where you've got 3 weeks in a KISA or whatever it
And
is,
also you can get 15 paid for sessions
rather
of
as a PMB,
therapy.
fine. But what I was getting to with regards to that is it's getting so bad, and the data that I've seen and just speaking to people is that in 10 years' time, it's going to get to a point, and what's happening now is that we are not going to be able to afford medical aid, potentially, people.
Oh,
So even those interventions are going to be inaccessible to some, because inaccessible to some people. Already now, people are saying to me, it happened last week, a guy said to me, I'm thinking of cancelling my medical aid. Obviously, I walked him off the ledge. Don't do it, rather cancel. But
we're circling the
but
drain.
5 years ago, which was in 2020, I said, in 10 years' time, a basic hospital plan
It's going to cost the same as.
is, I wouldn't say the same, but it's going to be extremely expensive. And that's the average of medical aid is about 10.2%, something like that. So in 10 years, it would have doubled, right? Does that make
Oh,
sense? So, and what's happening, and we can talk about this in another podcast, whatever it is, but school fees, private school fees, what's happening is that the middle class are bankrupting themselves now. And what's happening is they're even going to their parents,
I love
either
this.
because they have to or because the school says, make a plan. So middle class is bankrupting themselves and going to their parents and bankrupting their parents. So either their parents are going to run out of money or not have a comfortable retirement,
Or just have
and
nothing to leave to their
right,
kids.
and or the middle class, our contemporaries, are bankrupting themselves now that they are not investing, they are not putting away money for their retirement. And when it comes time to retire, never mind live comfortably, they're not going to have enough money for medical cover. Even a basic medical aid is going to be, a hospital plan is going to be expensive.
Like
So,
what they call medical insurance in the TV shows. Like literally, God forbid, a million times you get in a car
yeah,
accident, you get taken to hospital, you don't even have insurance, and they turn you away because they like, we know you can't pay, so we're not treating you.
in South Africa, medical insurance is a different thing to a
I
medical
know,
aid,
but I'm
but
just
the
saying,
concept, right?
yeah.
So, and again, in 10, 15 years, there's no doubt that the system is going to collapse in 10 years. And my only question is, within this 10-year gap now, how much of a hole are people going to dig themselves into? Not just right now, because we know the debt and what it brings, the pain and the suffering and the anxiety. Yeah, that's happening now. But when they have to retire,
Oof. Are they going to be able to retire?
well, if you are 65, some companies even younger, and you
Yeah,
have your
yeah,
own
yeah. You
business,
don't have a choice.
it's game over. So
And then, like, what if, because you immediately think, oh, their children will be supporting them. Right now, our contemporaries are looking to their parents to support them
and parents are supporting as best as they
if
can,
they can.
right? If they can.
So I'm saying to you, within a one generation flip, it becomes from our generation looking to their parents to support to saying, I'm not even going to be able to retire, but I'll probably be forced into a retirement. So I'm going to look down to the next generation to support me. That seems like, and then what? And then what's the next? Then everyone's bankrupt. Then what? Do we just live in the tree?
Yeah, so it's going to collapse. There's no doubt about that. I think the question, as I said, is in the next few years, and again, it's the middle class are the problem, but they're the solution as
Oh,
well.
I like that.
But at the same time, there's a huge gap now, a few hundred million
It's
rand
so overwhelming.
that rich people are stepping in now,
Plugging the hole.
plugging the holes, but the holes are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it will be insurmountable for them. And again, this is a bit brutal, but the sooner it collapses, the better in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think that the rich, at the end of the day, the rich have all the power. That's the way it works, and always has and always will. And the point is, are they going to keep on throwing their money
That's what I
away
was going to say to you. I was going to say to you,
into sinking Titanics,
right, I'm in two
or what?
minds because I know for sure that the best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior. So I can say, okay, we feeling panicked. Historically, what has happened? Because we got here, we made it to 2025 alive. So how have we always gotten here? It can't be that people are less wealthy. Okay, well, the rich have always bailed us out or controlled the system or funded the system, whatever you want to say. So there's that line of thinking. But what's to say, firstly, that in this kind of a market, in this kind of a setup and paradigm and economy, there's going to be a perpetuation of rich people? Are we living in an environment that it is even possible to become so wealthy? Perhaps that is going to collapse as well. So what is there to guarantee that there'll be
No,
infinite wealth going forward?
no, there won't be. There's no guarantee of that.
Right.
But and it could be even worse is people lose money, right? So if a community is reliant on one or two people, that one or two people emigrate or they lose their money. Look, at the same, that's a what if. Then we can say, what if another person comes through, right? But
No, but for me, it boils down to how do we know that there's always going to be a group of benevolent individuals who choose to spend their wealth on saving other human beings who have agency? What if we have a whole generation and cohort of wealthy people who choose to save the penguins?
yeah, I mean,
These are
at the end of the
these things.
day,
It's too unsafe for me to say and for me to rely. Oh, there'll always be wealthy people, and the wealthy people will always somehow foot the bill somewhere or other. They'll build schools. They'll this that.
look what happens.
To 10
What
years
happens
that.
ultimately is that the schools they carry on, but the quality drops of the teachers of the whole. They start cutting corners. They have to.
That's
And
just a good point.
what's going to, at the end of the day, as I said, the donors are a big issue. And obviously, the schools themselves, because I've said this before, and for them, their school is a business. They get their salary every month. They're happy, so they're going to fight
To
tooth
keep
and
the
nail
business
to keep their
floating.
business floating for themselves and for their family, and for their ego, whatever it is.
The motive is it's there.
Yeah, so it's going to collapse, right? There's no doubt. Either it's going to be 10 years or 15 years, it's going to collapse. But what happens, how much damage is going to be caused in this next
Oof.
10, 12, 15 years?
And how many precious people are going to take their own life? Which is not only the death of one person, it's the death of an entire family and ecosystem, and those children who then become 50 to 60 to 70% more likely to take their own life. Like,
It's really,
people want to say, like, oh, it's not cancer. I want to say perhaps this is worse than cancer because number one, cancer we can treat. Number two, people are doing everything they can to try and find a cure for cancer. We're doing everything we can to try and find a cure for the average Jonathan to not feel like the best thing he can do for his family is leave this earth.
It's extremely sobering, and unfortunately, there's very little being done right now to deal with that because
It's gut wrenching.
yeah, it's not pretty. It's not something that is,
Sexy.
yeah, unfortunately, and
It's not neat. There aren't great deliverables.
yeah, it's not so clear cut.
Last time we spoke, you said something so brilliant, which gave me a lot of hope and a feeling of empowerment, which was I'm opting out. This time, I kind of feel like opting out is a life or death decision. You have to make the decision to opt out from anything that's unnecessary in order to survive. Because let's not kid, financial survival is survival. Let's stop being PC about that. So opting out is a survival decision. Opting out of the medical aid plans that are expensive, opting out of the useless therapies or the therapies that may or may not be helping but are costing me 10,000. I'm opting out. Okay, so I've gone from that makes me feel empowered to I literally have no choice but to opt out of those things. But what's the next? Something has to change in the system. Opt out is personal autonomy, which I
Take it.
love, but it can only take us so far. It's a little life raft in a hurricane, stormy seas, whatever. But at some point, the system is going to, I'm sorry, I know this is very socialist or whatever, but the system is going to have more death on its hands. The system is going to have more suicides, preventable deaths on its hands in the next 10 years than we've ever seen in the history of our community. Unprecedented. I make that prediction. I hope I'm wrong. What do you agree with me?
Well, you wanted me to give you some hope for the community, whatever it is, and the only thing I can say, so I don't really have that much to offer you, except
Not enough.
what I said last time, and that is, let's talk about it. Let's not
Okay.
brush this under the carpet.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Ventilate the problem.
Right. Let's talk about the problem. Let's talk about it. Let's bring it up. Let's not stigmatize it. And that's all I can really give you right now. And that's the starting point of this whole process.
Dr. Phil says you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. So before we even try and find solutions or anything, we have to acknowledge the problem exists and the size and the depth and the breadth of the problems. I agree with you.
Thank you. Ciao.
That's so depressing. No, right. Let's see if it works.